Hello, everybody, and welcome to this conversation with Street Child. I am Veena Kanke, Director of Grants and Partnerships at Designing for Women. And I have two guests with me today. First, I have Ramya Madhavan, who is the Global Head for Education for Street Child, and she is joining us from Nepal. Hi, Ramya.
Hi, everyone.
And then I have Anna Bowden, who is the CEO of Street Child US, who's joining us from Berkeley, California. Hi, Anna.
Hi, everyone.
Well, you wanted to tell us a little something about Street Child, Anna?
Yes, I do. So, as Dr. Kanke said, I'm Anna, CEO of Street Child's US branch. I'm very excited to be working with Dining for Women. I want to say upfront a huge thank you for this grant. It's going to make a huge difference to the lives of the most marginalized young women. And it's great for me to be here based in the States because I get to meet some of the members too. So that's fantastic. Very briefly, Street Child is a global nonprofit which helps children and young people living in the world's toughest places to go to school and learn to read and write for a brighter future. We help children who are excluded from the education system or who live in places where the system doesn't exist or has collapsed. So that includes children living in extreme poverty on less than $2 a day who have no hope of reaching school. It includes children whose education was disrupted by disaster or conflict, for example, through displacement. So we work with increasing numbers of out-of-school refugee children, for example. We work with children affected by diseases like Ebola who have no one to support their schooling. And then, and this is where this program comes in, we have children who are not considered educable by their communities, for example, girls or children with disabilities or those shunned because of their race, class, or ethnicity. In total, since 2008, we've helped 250,000 children back into school, and 94% have been able to stay there and continue their studies. And just a brief word about structure. Street Child is run as a federation. We're a collection of fundraising offices across Europe, the UK, and the US, and we work together to fund the same programs. So whichever office you donate to, the money ends up in the same place. The UK office is the headquarters, and they've been around since 2008. But the US branch is 4 years old.
Oh,
and that's us in a nutshell.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure that everybody remembers that Amy is with me. She's our technology coordinator. She likes to be out of the frame. But now we'd like to go to Nepal. So Ramya, you have a presentation for us to tell us more about the project?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Veena. And again, it's wonderful to have an opportunity to speak to all of you today about this project that you're so generously supporting, Breaking the Bonds, which looks at achieving freedom through education and economic empowerment for Musahar girls in Nepal. The Musahars are one of the most marginalized caste groups in Nepal today. They rank 97 out of 97 amongst lower caste communities on indicators of education, economy, employment, and gender equality. Less than 4% of Musahar girls and women are able to read or write. The female literacy rate is extremely low. 46% of them are unable to recognize a single letter. 62% of them can't add a single-digit number, all of which combines to contribute to a lack of access to any formal education or employment, and as a result of which most Musahar girls find themselves in bonded labour or debt bondage, where they're indentured to a landlord, often paying off debts with interest loans as high as 40%, which they can never hope to pay off with the kind of employment opportunities that are available to them, as a result of which debt bondage is passed on from generation to generation to generation, despite the fact that it's currently outlawed in Nepal today. Our program started around February 2016 when we first came to recognise and understand this community and what their unique circumstances were. We then conducted close to 3 years of consultation with communities across 5 districts in the Terai region, the southern part of Nepal, and worked very closely with community-based organisations there to understand what had been done previously, why it had and hadn't really worked, and what we could be doing differently to make sure that we could achieve lasting change for these girls. Our model looks at 3 integrated components. So in the first instance, we have an accelerated learning program that supports girls to achieve foundational literacy and numeracy skills. In the second instance, we transition them into employment and enterprise establishment to help them achieve self-sufficiency, sustainability. And in the third instance, we work with them to equip them with life skills, recognizing that most of them are victims of terrible gender-based abuse and violence. many cases perpetrated by the men in the community, where rampant alcoholism is also an enormous problem that the girls face on a day-to-day basis. The first component, the Accelerated Learning Program, runs for 6 months, where we work to teach girls how to read and write. And I shared the statistics earlier of just how dire the circumstances are in this particular regard. What we do is within 6 months, all girls are taught to read and write at a minimum of a 3rd grade level. And we very, very strongly believe at Street Child that teaching someone to read and write is fundamentally life-changing. It means a girl knows how much money she should receive for change when she goes to buy vegetables at the market. She knows who she's voting for when she signs that ballot paper. She knows which bus she's supposed to take to access a hospital. And so this program is very deeply targeted and tailored around ensuring every single one of our girls, despite the fact that most of them have never been to school before, are able to achieve these foundational literacy and numeracy outcomes. The second component looks at working very closely with employers in the region to transition the girls into employment opportunities, and for girls where that might not be a viable option. So, for example, young mothers or girls who have disabilities, we work with them to support them to set up their own enterprise within their own communities. So this might look like working in a cottage industry, working in a factory in a region, or setting up a small tea stall that serves the local community. We recognise that whilst education and employment are obviously key to our sustainability strategy, another core component needs to look at addressing entrenched attitudes both within the community and around the community. We run life support circles for the girls, life skills support circles for the girls 3 times a week, where a social worker visits them. We intentionally don't program this curriculum too tightly, and it's very much left open to addressing issues that the girls themselves wish to address, whether that might be looking at water, sanitation, hygiene, and in particular menstrual hygiene, given most of the girls are adolescents, or whether that's looking at disaster risk resilience and response, where there's a heightened risk of flooding in monsoon season. What we hope and what we know to be true from the other programs that we've run in other countries is the integration of these 3 components, as opposed to standalone programs, has the potential to really achieve both individual change by supporting girls to become self-sufficient and individual families to break free of that cycle of debt bondage, but ultimately has a collective impact in terms of raising the status of one of the most marginalised communities, both in Nepal and across South Asia. We're very, very grateful to Dining for Women for the support that you're offering us, and we look forward to working with you and continuing the conversation with you as we go along this journey together with our girls over the next year or so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramya. It is so clear that Street Child is bringing its global experience working in these different communities to creating a very sustainable program here in Nepal. So, Ramya, I'm going to wait for you to come back to my screen.
Sure.
And I was going to ask you, can you tell us a little bit more about where the Musahars are right now? Like, where are they in terms of their debt bondage? And what do you see happening to that centuries-old practice?
Sure. So the Musahar community, as I mentioned before, are scattered across South Asia. They're not specific to Nepal alone. There are large populations of them in northern parts of India, very much along the border with Nepal, and smaller populations of them in Bangladesh as well. So this is really a regional issue that we're looking to work with multiple partners to look at broader systemic solutions to as well. Bonded labour was outlawed in 2002 in Nepal and is formally illegal. But what happened was when the government outlawed bonded labour, no alternative programs were really set up to support these families to secure education opportunities or employment opportunities, as a result of which many of them, because they didn't have any access to capital or credit, simply went back into the same negative coping strategies of approaching landlords, asking for loans, falling into the same trap of exorbitantly high interest rates and an inability to continue paying them off. So despite the fact that it's made illegal, this practice has continued on from generations. And so the girls continue to informally be engaged in debt bondage, despite the fact that it's illegal.
Mm-hmm. So the employment opportunities, perhaps the men in the communities can travel elsewhere to work. The women and girls have fewer opportunities at home. So there's the employment part, but what's happening with their access to credit too? Where do they go for credit?
So at this point, most of them access credit, like we mentioned for through their employers. What we hope and what we're doing through our employment support program is connecting them to cooperatives that we've identified in the region that we're working very closely with so that they have access to safer credit. We're also working very intensively around financial literacy and financial inclusion. So part of the employment transition program involves a financial literacy course where girls learn about spending and saving. And one of the key components of that is also supporting girls to open up their own bank accounts such that as they go through the process of group savings and earning interest with the cooperative, they're gradually able to graduate such that they become part of the financial services system, which again, we know has tremendous social and political implications for them as a group as well. We recognise that boys are able to travel over the border and seek labour opportunities in places like northern India. For girls, we've recognised and spoken very closely and worked very closely with employers in the region, in particular growth industries, to understand that there are in fact employment opportunities available for women, for example, in textile production, which is one of the growth industries in the area. We're working very closely to match them with those industries and employers and cooperatives in those industries.
Mm-hmm. I know it is so unfortunate that across the world we find communities and corporations that believe there's money to be made by lending to the poor, by charging them exorbitant rates. And that's unfortunate. And I'm so glad that all of you are working to help these communities. So I gather that these communities do not own any land. So there is no agricultural work for them. Is livestock a possibility for them? Cattle, livestock?
Absolutely, livestock is a possibility, and we're working very closely with industries in that area. I will say, I think one of the really interesting things is previous programs have tended to fail because, again, there is quite a lot of gender bias in the way that development agencies tend to operate as well, and it's quite natural when you work with populations of adolescent girls that you think about things like tailoring and beauty parlors. And when we did our first round of consultations with the girls, we were really pleasantly surprised to discover that most of them were interested overwhelmingly in mobile repairing and computer repairing and in acquiring IT skills to be able to work in those industries as well. So this is an area that we're investigating very closely and trying to identify opportunities in. And we know Nepal is rapidly modernizing, and so there is absolutely opportunity there. And we want to be very careful as an organization working closely with them that we are working with them to fulfill their aspirations and their areas of interest.
Mobile repair, they could give the boys a run for their money. So that would be interesting to see a cultural change. Before I let you go, Ramya, could you address a little bit about disaster relief? And given that Nepal has suffered earthquakes and is kind of vulnerable on that score.
No, absolutely. This is something that's actually very much constantly on our mind. And if you look at our website, for example, we actually entered Nepal as a humanitarian actor to address the earthquake and its impact on children who were then forced out of school. And we worked for 3 years very closely with UNICEF and with communities across the 14 earthquake-affected districts to rebuild schools, train teachers in disaster risk resilience. And that's the expertise and experience that we're looking to transfer to this region. The Terai isn't as susceptible to earthquake as it is to annual flooding. And we see our communities are affected by this year on year. And so what we do is work, one, very, very closely with communities to build practices that are environmentally sustainable and understand the impacts that the monsoon can have. And that can look at things like, for example, safer construction that is flood resilient. As well as things like safe hand washing practices, because we know it's in the aftermath of a disaster that we are most vulnerable to the spread of cholera and other epidemics. So this is very much something we've incorporated into the life skills component of the program in particular, and is something that we're looking to grow as well across the region, not just working with this community. Given the previous work that we've done in Nepal, we'd very much like to scale that up in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for all of that. So, Anna, I was wondering if you could address some of your really well-known programs that you have done with the Ebola epidemic, since Street Child is so well-known for your humanitarian work.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I said before, Street Child brings education to the world's poorest and most vulnerable and disenfranchised children. And because 1/3 of the world's 125 million out-of-school children live in conflict or disaster zones, a huge part of our work is what we call education in emergencies. That's working in countries where education is disrupted or destroyed due to conflict or natural disasters, for example, like Ebola. So in 2014, when the Ebola outbreak hit Sierra Leone, West Africa more generally, but we had a presence in Sierra Leone. We had a unique network in Sierra Leone because we'd been doing development work there since 2008. And we were the only organization in the region. We're the only organization in the country, that had a presence in every region. So we are able to redeploy 1,600 of our teachers and social workers to provide health education, which falls in very nicely with what Ramya was just saying about post-earthquake in Nepal. And they provided health education to around 250,000 rural villagers, and they literally went door to door, knocking on doors and saying, "Look, this is what the disease is. It's not a curse. It's not a government conspiracy. It's real. You must wash your hands. Don't touch dead bodies who have Ebola." And it's impossible to say for certain why something didn't happen, but there were only a few handfuls of incidences of the disease afterwards in the regions where we'd been, and so we estimate that we saved around 250,000 lives. For less than $1 per head. And in addition, we supported 20,000 orphans to get their lives back after losing everything through counseling, family reunification, back to school packages, and our livelihoods program, where we gave the new caregivers of these orphans a grant and training to run a small business.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for joining us. Best wishes for your project in Nepal and our deep gratitude for the work that you're doing globally. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.